Hi, and welcome to episode number 53 of the Lewiston Tribune podcast. I'm managing editor Matt Baney, and I'm joined today by Dean Ferguson, reporter at the Tribune. We have a tough one to talk about today. Last week on Friday, there was a shooting out at Lapwai, and one person died, and another person was injured, and someone's been arrested. I guess, Dean, you've been covering this for us. Can you kind of give us a recap of what happened in this incident?
So it was Friday evening around 5 o'clock, a little after. There was a couple that was walking down Thunderbird Hill Road because their car had ran out of gas. And so they're going along the road. They come across a house that they tell police, the survivor tells police later that they thought was abandoned. And thought they'd poke around on the property and started opening up some things. And the property wasn't abandoned. And inside was Christopher Forslof and his fiance. And one was taking a shower, the other one was in the laundry room. And so they were startled by these two people, and they asked them what they wanted. They said, "Oh, we're just here to we're interested in buying the place." And they said it's not for sale. It had already been sold, even though there was a for sale sign in the yard. And in the meantime, Christopher Forslof sees a open door on the property and immediately makes him think that these guys had been improperly poking around in his property. So he has his fiance call the police. He grabs his gun and runs down the Thunder Hill Road towards town about a quarter of a mile, stops these people. Argument ensues, and a woman named Crystal Medlin, 45-year-old from Lewiston, ended up shot and killed during the incident, and a man named Kelvin Jones, who's 65 from Lewiston, also was shot in the stomach and sent to the hospital. And since then, Christopher Forslof has been charged with second-degree murder and attempted second-degree murder.
And in the recap, it seems like the surviving parties all kind of agree on the details, more or less, up until we get to the incident of the shooting. What's the difference in the two tellings at that point?
Usually there just isn't a witness left to talk about it. So you've got Christian Forslof, who's telling the police that when he stopped these people down the road, they became threatening. And even though they were unarmed and he had a fully loaded Glock 42 handgun, he said that when he stopped them, which he was hoping to detain them until police showed up and they could be arrested for prowling around his property, presumably prowling. Then he said that the woman, Crystal Medlin, was advancing on him and pointing her finger at him in a threatening way, that he felt threatened. He felt the both of them would tackle him, take his gun, and he'd get shot. So he told him, "I'll count to three." And by the time he got to three, he felt like he needed to shoot him. This is what he told police, according to court documents. Mr. Jones, was able to talk to police, I think either that day or the next day. I'm not sure when they interviewed him. But he told them that he didn't have to pull his gun, that Crystal Medlin was acting in just a normal way. And yeah, she was walking towards him and pointing her finger and telling him, "You don't have to do this." Presumably what he means by that is call the police. You don't have to stop us. We weren't doing anything wrong. But he just said that there was no need to pull a gun and shoot him. Mm-hmm. They weren't threatening him, and they weren't threatening.
So that's the matter that'll play out in the legal system, and we'll cover that. We'll see how that goes. Christian Forslof did make a court appearance early this week. What was that like?
It went down in a pro forma kind of matter. These initial hearings that the people accused of felonies have is basically an opportunity for the judge to tell them what they're charged with, make sure they understand what they're charged with, make sure they have an attorney, and set bond and these kind of things, and then move ahead from there. So it's not really a place where much of the argument goes on, mm-hmm. right? But Judge Kalbflesh, who's a retired judge, he was covering for all the judges who were off on some convention this week down in Boise. He handled it, and he's a veteran at handling these kind of things. And so there's a small crowd, maybe 5 or 6 people there that seemed to be there to support Christopher. I'm not sure on that. But Christopher Forslof was zoomed in over the jailhouse from the jail over digital live feed, and that's how they handled his appearance. And the judge asked him if he understood what the charges of first-degree murder and second-degree murder. He's like, yeah, I understand them. I disagree with them. Mm-hmm. Which honestly, that's more talking than you usually get out of somebody who's charged with something so severe. Both of these charges have, one has life in prison, the other has a 25-year maximum. Maybe it's 20. I'm forgetting, but they're very serious charges. And then at one point during the hearing, and this didn't make it in the article for space reasons, Christopher Forslof told the judge that, he was really more worried about his fiance than he was worried about himself, because he's her main caregiver. And this is when he was telling the judge that he needed to qualify for a public defender. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, my fiance needs my help, and she relies on my income, and now I'm here, which just sounded really pretty optimistic at this point for a guy that's in jail right now for a second-degree murder charge.
Right. Well, you looked into Christian Forslof's background some this week as well. Lots of rumors about that around the community. Tell us a little about what you found.
When he was living in Bellingham, Washington, he was outed over there by a activist group of some kind that, as far as I could tell, is defunct at this point, for being a neo-Nazi. And so it's relevant as to whether or not that's true. We've got that people making that claim. And so I looked into that, and yes, it turns out that when he was over in Bellingham, he had a burgeoning music career as a producer of electric dance music. This particular style is called hard style of dance music. I understand you listened to a cut of it, and you're not necessarily adding hard style dance music to your mixtapes yet.
Well, I don't think so. It sounds like standard dance music. Of course, some of the titles that he produced, such as "I Became a,"
not nuanced.
No, no,
if art has nuance in it, those titles offer very little art.
No.
Yeah, and so, but those were produced actually at the time when he was pursuing this career. It looked like he had a gig at the Seattle Underground, which is a pretty cool place to get a gig. Mm. And his titles weren't that. Actually, those older titles from like 2018, 2019 looked like, I was reading some of the lyrics, at least the stuff that they'll publish, and it looked kind of, it's just like, questioning the nature of existence in the world. And over time, apparently, that shifted to more of a neo-Nazi kind of beliefs that he got outed for. And that was in, I think, 21 and 22. And then by 2023, we show homes.com as him buying his house in Lapwai. So I don't know if him being outed in Bellingham, Washington, or Burlington, Washington, he was living around that area, is why he moved here. But it was around that time that he did move here.
So he is, I noticed we got some criticism online for referring to him as a Lapwai man, which is accurate because he lives in Lapwai. But indeed, he's a recent comer to Lapwai, it appears.
And technically, I'm not sure where the Lapwai city limits is. He may be within 1/8 of a mile of the city limits too. So, however, if you look at where the shootings happened, I'm pretty sure that happened in the city limits, or if not really close. So anyway, yeah, he is not a long-standing local from Lapwai.
A lot of his posts were on Gab Social, which is a social media I wasn't aware of. And you and I both looked at it, and I think when you hear people talk about the dark web, I think that's the dark web, I would think.
It's interesting. I looked at what Pew Research had to say about it, and they didn't judge it. They just said you could find this percentage of people espousing these kind of ideologies on there. But what it is a social media platform started by a guy who's, I mean, I just haven't been able to run down this rabbit hole too far, but he wanted an alternative to Facebook and Twitter. And his philosophy is do not offer any kind of, guardrails for what is, it's all about free speech. And so it is, journalists have noted this who go to Gab to do these kind of stories, a haven for people with right-wing ideologies or, left-wing, just whatever ideologies that are out of the mainstream that would be offensive on some other social media platform. And yeah, I spent a little time on there. It's dark. If dark web meant black heart, there seemed to be a lot of blackened hearts there. Yeah. If dark web means it's hidden, it wasn't that hard to find.
That's true. Well, okay, Dean. So this incident happened, as you mentioned, Thunderhill Road, and it appears as though the shooting was right near the intersection with Thunderhill Road and Ash Avenue. And unfortunately, it's not the first incident that's happened kind of in that general vicinity recently. Can you kind of tell us about some of these other instances that have happened in this area that's sort of north of Lapwai?
Yeah. And, just to be really clear, Lapwai's a lovely town. It's a place where a lot of people who are friends with each other. They have generations of friends with each other, and they're related to each other. It's the seat of the tribal government is there for the Nez Perce tribal, the Nimipu people. And, honestly, I like that town. I like that community. And on Ash Avenue is, there are families there, and it's not a big area. But tragically in the last, just this summer, there's been this shooting there at the head of Thunderhill Road and Ash Avenue, and then you just go a block further, and there was a killing that is being litigated right now in federal court, and that was Victor Gray is accused of first-degree murder. I think it's first degree, and
that is second degree.
It is second degree. Okay, sorry. Second degree murder. I think initially they had him that way, but second degree murder. And that involved shooting a person who he was fighting with on his property. As the fight continued, Victor Gray's significant other became involved and was injured. And then at some point, the fighting stopped, and the man who was murdered was leaving the property, according to court records, and which includes some eyewitness testimony from the neighbors looking over the fence, and a neighbor who had come there to break up the fight. And anyway, as the guy was leaving the property, he was shot. And that's going to be what that court case is about a little bit too. Is did he have to shoot the guy? Did he not have to shoot the guy?
The initial hearing is scheduled for December 1st. At U.S. District Court in Coeur d'Alene.
And, that's an interesting question, how quickly these things move through the court system. Often it seems, I need to ask somebody this and report on this, but if there's some level of question as to whether or not this person's guilty and it'll require a jury to decide, it seems like those guys get to move through a little more quickly. For instance, I know there are people that are still in jail from alleged murders that happened in 2024, and they don't have a court trial until 2026. And so, but there's a lot of speculation as to, anyway, the different cases altogether. So that neighborhood's seen a lot of tragedy, a lot of trauma. It's a shame.
And there was 2 years ago, in 2023, there was another murder. William O. Eiley of Lapwai, when he was only 19 years old. This happened on Thunder Valley Drive, which is a bit further north of the area we were talking about. He killed Elias Shug Spencer, and Eiler was eventually convicted of that and sentenced to 19 years in federal prison for that. So Anyway, it's always unfortunate, and no matter where it happens, and it's anyway just unlucky that it's seems to have happened in this area quite a bit lately.
And I know it matters to tribal folks, right? That these two most recent murders don't, as far as I can tell, they don't involve tribal members, and that one did. But it just, it matters to the community that when we say Lapwai man, we don't mean Lapwai tribal person, right? We mean somebody that lives near Lapwai.
That's right.
And maybe they haven't lived there forever either. I as far as Victor Gray goes, I think they've moved there within the last 5 years as well.
Mm-hmm. And in the Victor Gray case, the man who was killed was Melvin P. Williamson Jr., who was a tribal member. But
thank you for saying that.
Yeah, good distinction there to point out. Well, okay. We'll of course we'll cover all that as it goes. And in terms of the Christian Forslof case, what would you expect the timeline to be in that? And I'm kind of asking you to speculate a little bit.
Yeah. My speculation would be that he's going to want to move it as quickly as he can, because he's given no evidence from what little he said publicly in the courtroom. The evidence he's given is that he believes he's innocent, and innocent people don't like to rot away in jail. And I honestly, uninnocent people, guilty people don't like to rot away in jail either.
True.
But it's just no place to be. And if you can get out of it, that's what he's going to try to do. So I'm sure he's going to be pushing his attorneys. There are laws in place regarding speedy trial. So the court always tries to keep it within a realm of a reasonable speedy trial. So my guess is after we get through the preliminary hearing, they'll probably start talking about mediation and statuses, and then start talking about court trial.
Okay. Well, Dean, thanks. Thanks for the insight into that case, and good reporting you've done on that. And you can read all of Dean's reporting at lmtribune.com. And that's all for this week's episode of the Lewiston Tribune podcast. We come back each week with another new episode. You can find those at our YouTube page, at lmtribune.com, and wherever you find podcasts. We have a new episode each week, so come back next week for our next topic. Thanks for joining us. Bye.